At 7:50 p.m. on March 22nd, a terror attack occurred at Krokus City Hall music venue, located 15 kilometers northwest of Moscow. The editor-in-chief of the Russian media group Semonian said this incident has caused the deaths of 143 people. Immediately following the incident, Russian Prime Minister Medvedev stated that if Ukraine is found responsible, all Ukrainian leaders must be eliminated. 4 hours after the attack, the Islamic State (ISIS) claimed responsibility, announcing the safe return of all gunmen to their base. But Russian authorities insist that the perpetrators have not escaped. Within a day, they apprehended over a dozen Tajik individuals who were coerced into false confessions broadcasted on television. These individuals, it turns out, were not involved in the attack. Videos captured by Moscow residents, footage released by ISIS, and subsequent photographs of the scene reveal the professionalism of the attackers. They maintained strategic positions with guns aimed in various directions. The gunfire was controlled and rhythmic, indicating extensive training. The perpetrators exhibited steady movements and clear directions, suggesting they underwent prolonged and precise training with seamless coordination. The gunfire and arson lasted only a few minutes, yet their impact was devastating. The arson targeted crucial points within the music venue, such as corridors and elevator halls, obstructing the escape routes for the crowd. This resulted in a significant number of casualties trapped and suffocated by smoke and flames. It is evident that the perpetrators were very familiar with the layout, having undergone targeted simulated training sessions multiple times. Clearly, the meticulously planned terrorist attack bears all the hallmarks of ISIS's signature professionalism. But Russian authorities claim that the attackers were recruited randomly from semi-literate novices on Telegram, allegedly motivated by a $5,000 reward. Russia's attempt to downplay the severity of the situation has left many astounded. On the evening of the 23rd, ISIS-K promptly released photographs of the gunmen, reaffirming to the world that their operatives had safely returned to base. Russian officials, in turn, continued to deny these claims, insisting that the people they apprehended were the real perpetrators, dismissing ISIS's assertions. In a shocking turn of events, some analysts believe that the Putin regime appears to have employed ISIS to orchestrate a terror attack in Moscow. They only became furious when ISIS attempted to claim responsibility. This anger stems from Putin's initial plan to blame the attack on Ukraine in order to stir public outrage and mobilize 500,000 conscripts. The situation took an unexpected turn when Moscow tried to pin the attack on Ukraine, while ISIS continued to release evidence proving their involvement. The Americans had already anticipated this. No wonder that Putin was attempting to smear Ukraine and the United States. On the 23rd, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova openly questioned the basis on which the US denies Ukrainian involvement in the incident. She demanded that if the US had credible information, it should be shared. Furthermore, Zakharova threatened that Russia has the capability to unravel the case and identify those orchestrating the attack behind the scenes. According to sources in Russia disclosed on X, the Russian authorities plan to coerce the captured terror suspects into confessing that Ukraine was the mastermind behind the attack by signing already prepared statements. Those who refuse cooperation might face death, possibly disguised as suicide or heart attack. To execute this plan, high-ranking officials from Russia's Federal Security Service and the prison system FSIN convened on the 23rd. They planned the coercion of suspects in FSB-controlled prisons, ensuring no evidence of abuse remains. The protocol includes not allowing detailed examinations or photographic documentation of the suspects upon their arrival at the detention facilities, with direct orders to induce heart attacks in unmanageable prisoners. On the evening of the attack, Putin spoke on the phone with the president of Tajikistan, Emomali Rahmon. During the conversation, the Russian side claimed that the 4 attackers involved in Friday night's terrorist act were Tajik nationals. This revelation alarmed Rahmon, who quickly agreed to strengthen anti-terrorism cooperation. This implies Russian intervention in Tajikistan's domestic affairs. Given ISIS-K's unexpected claim of responsibility for the attack, Putin saw an opportunity to attack ISIS in Syria, thereby stirring chaos in the Middle East. On the evening of March 23rd, Putin also spoke with the president of Syria to enhance cooperation in anti-terrorism. This indicates a concerted effort to target anti-government forces and terrorists in Syria to reclaim territory. This development has significant implications as it provides Russia with a justifiable reason to transport a large quantity of weapons to Syria. Once the ISIS threat is addressed, these weapons could potentially be turned against Israel. In response, the White House acted swiftly, with President Joe Biden signing a law to provide $3.3 billion in military aid to Israel. This preemptive move suggests that the US had intelligence indicating not only Putin's intentions towards Ukraine, but also his plans to cause disruption in the Middle East. Syria had a close relationship with the former Soviet Union during the Cold War era. During the Arab Spring, which threatened many autocratic governments along the Mediterranean, the Assad regime managed to survive with Russian support, making it a crucial ally for Russia in the Middle East. Last summer, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad visited Hangzhou, China, to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping during the Asian Games. Following this meeting, several of Assad's children remained in China for their education, securing their safety, but also raising concerns about them potentially being held as hostages. While the specifics of what was discussed remain unknown, it's clear that arrangements were made for Assad to play a significant role in the Middle East. The strategy appears to leverage Syria as a base for Russia to potentially instigate a broader conflict in the Middle East. In the Middle East, particularly in the Tigris-Euphrates basin and along the Mediterranean coast, various powers have previously used the fight against ISIS as a pretext to establish control over territories. Iraq, Syria, Iran, Turkey, and the United States have all been involved in these conflicts. The outcome has been that Iraq deployed its array of armed forces while Syria managed to maintain its revenue-generating territories. With Russia's renewed interest in combating ISIS, it is likely to rally these former participants for a concerted effort against ISIS within their borders. Russia may then attempt to coordinate these governments against common foes such as Israel and the United States. In this scenario, Russia's involvement in the Middle East is in direct conflict against the United States and Israel. This situation could change the dynamics of U.S. congressional support for Ukraine and Israel. The Republican Party's reluctance to support Ukraine might be challenged by Russia's actions in the Middle East, particularly if Russia aids enemies of Israel. As a result, U.S. assistance to Ukraine is unlikely to decrease. Regarding ISIS-K, which is based along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, Moscow could justify actions against ISIS-K's strongholds and pressure Afghanistan to investigate ISIS-K's activities. If the Taliban cooperates, official statements might eventually be issued claiming the United States is behind ISIS-K, thus shifting the blame for terrorism onto the US. On the evening of March 23rd, for the fourth consecutive day, Russia deployed a significant number of strategic bombers to launch long-range cruise missiles at Kyiv. Notably, at least one cruise missile deliberately entered Polish airspace where it remained for 39 seconds before altering its course towards Kyiv. The missile, flying at an altitude of 400 meters and a speed of 800 kilometers per hour, penetrated 1.5 to 2 kilometers into Polish territory. In response, Poland and the United States scrambled 4 F-16 fighter jets but ultimately did not shoot down the missile. This maneuver by Russia could be interpreted as a test of NATO's radar warning systems and fighter response times, potentially laying the groundwork for future actions against Poland. Although the missile did not cause any physical damage, its incursion into Polish airspace represents a highly provocative and dangerous escalation, highlighting the heightened tension and risks in the region. Meanwhile, Ukraine was far from passive. On March 24th, they launched a significant joint offensive on the Crimean Peninsula, destroying at least 12 tactical aircraft and firing 40 Storm Shadow Scalp cruise missiles, ADM-160 Poseidon missiles, and long-range drones. This offensive successfully destroyed two large landing ships, the Yamal and Azov, undergoing repairs in the dockyard. The cumulative loss for the Black Sea Fleet amounted to 28 vessels, with 33% of its warships rendered inoperative. Additionally, Ukrainian forces targeted key Russian military facilities in Crimea, including communication centers, garrison bases, and fuel depots, using a substantial number of drones to overwhelm Russian air defenses. This operation served as a message to Russia. Despite any anger or provocation, they should carefully assess their military capabilities and not let anger cloud their judgment, leading to further losses. The gap between Russia and NATO is wider than ever, a fact that Putin is aware of. NATO's capacity to swiftly respond in the event of a nuclear conflict, not just by destroying missile launch sites but also by striking key cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg. It underscores the limitations of Russia's nuclear threat as merely a deterrent strategy rather than a viable military option. Putin's acknowledgement of this reality suggests that while nuclear rhetoric may be employed for intimidation, its actual use as a military strategy remains unlikely. The British royal family commemorates the Korean War, but what is the intention behind this gesture? Let's now turn our attention to the latest developments on the Korean Peninsula. On March 19th, King Charles III of the United Kingdom hosted a grand reception at Buckingham Palace for over 100 British veterans of the Korean War. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the conflict, often referred to as the Forgotten War. Princess Anne, a key member of the royal family, delivered a heartfelt commemorative speech. The British contribution to the Korean War was substantial, with over 60,000 troops deployed, 1,100 killed, and 2,500 wounded. 70 years on, the royal family's decision to commemorate the war on such a grand scale suggests deeper intentions. Moreover, the official Korean War Remembrance Day is July 27th. Raising questions about the timing of this commemoration, especially as there appears to be no direct trigger for the event at this time. But considering Barack Obama's visit to the UK on the 18th, a different issue comes into light. This visit was informal and focused on the Obama Foundation's activities. Yet the fact that a former US president met with the UK's Prime Minister suggests there might be more at play, with the visit ostensibly about the Foundation's work in Britain potentially serving as a cover for more significant discussions. Given that the British royal family commenced commemorating the 70th anniversary of the Korean War the day after Obama's visit, analysts speculate that Obama's trip could be related to the Korean Peninsula, perhaps signaling a desire for UK involvement in the region. The Korean Peninsula is a crucial place in the US's strategy to contain China in East Asia, and any significant US action there would likely involve its closest ally, the UK. The royal family's prominent commemoration of the Korean War could be seen as laying the groundwork for the UK government's future involvement in the peninsula, setting the stage for potential military actions and garnering domestic support in advance. Upon hearing the news in East Asia, responses from China and North Korea were swift. On March 21st, Kim Song-nam, a substitute member of the Political Bureau of the Workers' Party of Korea and Minister of International Affairs, led a delegation to China. During their visit, they were met with high-level engagements, including meetings with Wang Honing, a member of the Standing Committee of the Politburo of the CCP. Liu Jianchao, director of the Office of the Foreign Affairs Commission, and Wang Yi, the foreign minister. The intensity and the level of these meetings suggest the planning of significant matters. At the same time, at the invitation of the International Liaison Department of the CCP, Sir David Lidington, the former chief secretary to the Treasury under Theresa May and currently the president of the Great Britain China Center, led a bipartisan delegation to China on March 18th. On March 21st, they met with Wang Honing. According to analysts, the Chinese side inquired about the stability of the British royal family and the UK's stance on issues related to the Korean Peninsula during these meetings. As a staunch Brexiteer and advocate for prioritizing domestic interests over involvements in Far Eastern affairs, Lidington's position is clear. He is against UK intervention in the Korean issue. For Beijing, the priority is to avoid being drawn into a conflict with the United States in Northeast Asia. It feared that escalating tensions could affect China's northeastern, northern, and eastern regions. The Chinese government prefers to diplomatically leverage opposition within the UK against involvement in the Korean peninsula, aiming to defuse the current tense situation as much as possible. Influencing UK decision-making directly may be impossible for the Chinese Communist Party, but Sir David Lidington, who also chairs the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, in the UK, could possess significant intelligence on the UK's potential involvement in the Korean peninsula. This makes the possibility of him passing information to China not entirely out of the question. If the US requests UK involvement in the Korean peninsula, it is almost certain that the UK will comply. Lidington's visit to China could further fuel suspicions about his relationship with the CCP. In 2024, the flames of conflict in the Middle East are likely to burn but may not ignite immediately. Similar to the current situation in Ukraine, where the supply of weapons is not yet fully realized and the exchange of fires are not as intense. The East Asian situation is also marked by China's lack of readiness and its efforts to avoid accidental escalation. The international situation in 2024 could be described as on the brink, yet parties may not be fully prepared to launch into action. Nonetheless, the year is unlikely to be peaceful, as intriguing events may be quietly unfolding in various corners of the globe.